All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to PT on Ice. Thank you for being here on a Thursday morning. Thursdays, as always, are Gut Check Thursdays. They are Leadership Thursdays. I am Dr. Jeff Moore, thrilled to be your host today. Currently, I have the pleasure of serving as the CEO at the Institute of Clinical Excellence and could not love the role more. Thrilled to be here on the podcast. So it's Gut Check Thursday. Let's get that out of the way. It looks deceivingly comfortable this week, which is never the case. So can't wait to run headlong into traffic here. It is an AMRAP 12. So we've got a 12-minute AMRAP. It is 9 deadlifts at a pretty light barbell. So 115.75 with 6 burpees and then 3 power cleans at that same barbell. So there's no doubt with that light barbell, we're going to accumulate a lot of rounds. I think Alan said somewhere between 8 and 10 should be the goal. So maybe trying to set 1 round a minute and then try to hold that line. I'm going to try to knock this out at Onward Charlotte this afternoon. We have our all Onward meeting this weekend. So all the Onward locations around the country are descending on Charlotte for our strategy sesh all weekend. So can't wait for that. Hoping to get it in, but make sure to post your score. As always, hashtag Ice Trained, hashtag Gut Check Thursday, tag Ice Physio. We love tracking all of you suffering through these workouts. So thanks for doing them. As far as courses coming up, getting to the end of the year, a lot of sellouts. Advanced Concepts sold out at MMOA. One of our extremity courses just sold out. So we're having a lot of sellouts here at the end of the year. We do have a few courses left. There's one more online course, and that is Fitness Athlete Pregnancy and Postpartum, and that'll start November 1st. So if you want to jump into pregnancy and postpartum CMFA, that is going to be November 1st. November 6, 7, we've got a host of live courses going on around the country. We have Older Adult is going to be in Massillon, Ohio. Also November 6, 7th, Dunaway is going to be teaching total spine thrust in Knightdale, North Carolina. I'm sorry, that's Extremity Management is in Knightdale. Justin will be the same weekend in Pasco, Washington. So all of that stuff's coming up over the next couple of weeks. So jump in. As always, ptonice.com is where you find that stuff. Okay, so it's a Leadership Thursday. And I want to talk about the chameleon dominates the podium. And I want to discuss this topic of deep work that seems to be such a buzz topic this year. And it's a great one for Leadership Thursday because the way you organize your workflow, it really results in whether or not you execute, move forward, move up, achieve your goals. This is a really important topic. So I'm glad it's coming up a lot, but I want to unpack some thoughts around it. So, first, let's define this, right? So let's define these ideas. So deep work is kind of, let's call it the controlling the chaos mode, right? So this is when you're going to choose to block your work, right? You're only going to be focusing on one thing at any given point in time. This is the hold my calls mode, right? I'm not taking any disturbances right now. I'm all in on this one thing that I'm doing. This is in contrast to, let's call it the embrace the chaos mode, where you're probably vacuuming and answering the phone and welcoming somebody in all at the same time, right? Trying to jump from one thing to another, doing things as they come across your desk, right? As opposed to putting rigid boundaries around your work. So these two are kind of our options, if you will, on how to organize and execute our day. Now, to be fair, I first off have to address some of my previous comments on deep work. I've certainly got a lot of folks who have reached out and said, Jeff, it sounds like you're sort of against deep work. And that's not fair. Now, I will say after I read the book by the same name, so some of you have read Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, and I do feel that it gets overly romanticized. And I think that's fair. I do, however, believe that it is appropriate in plenty of cases. And I want to make sure we get the record straight here. And I want to deepen the conversation around these options. So this idea of blocking your work, of rigid boundaries, of only doing one thing, turning off your notifications, not taking phone calls, all of you in one mode, there is a place for that. I think the first one to state is it's undeniably better for your mental health. There's no question about this, right? Like, Deep work is better for your mental health than chaotic work. Like when you're in a chaotic mode and you're doing nine things at once, or at least it feels that way, and it kind of feels like nothing's really getting done great. Everything is just you're just trying to check the box and move things forward. That is very draining, right? That is exhausting. It tends to feel, like I said, like nothing is getting done perfectly. And for those of us who have high quality standards, that can be very frustrating. So that mode is very mentally draining. It really works on the battery. Deep work is the opposite. Tends to be very rejuvenating, right? Because you're only doing one thing. You don't have mental residue going from one project to another. You're very proud of the work that you create because it tends to be your best work because other things are not engaging on it. So from a mental health perspective, it is a healthier way to go about work. I think that's fair. If for whatever reason, at any given season or point in time, your mental health needs to be a priority, I think engaging in more deep work makes sense. And I think being able to recognize, like, I'm feeling frazzled, like, I just can't right now. I've got to just focus on this one thing. I think it's important that you know when you're in that space. And I think deep work can be a great antidote to that feeling of burnout because it tends to fuel the opposite thoughts, emotions, mental spaces. Number two, when quality is massively more important than quantity or productivity, that is a great time to be into to shift into the deep work gear. Your best work requires your whole self. There's no question here, right? Like your absolute best work. If doing something truly original that uses all of your RAM, your absolute best work requires your entire self. So when that is the priority, when you're working on a project where perfection is needed. I can give you numerous examples in my life where I've been in these spaces. A great example is when I am developing courses, right, from nothing. And I'm trying to build the skeleton of them. And I'm trying to think of how the course is going to flow and how the learning moments are going to arrive to be the most meaningful for the person receiving the information. I'm sure a lot of folks who work with me at South College are laughing listening to this show. I'm not the easiest person to work with during those times because it requires all of me. I think we all have those tasks or roles or things in our lives that are massively important to get perfectly right and require all of you. And that is when that deep work gear is incredibly important. This is why deep work, I think, tends to be celebrated in the creatives, right? In the authors who are trying to publish that book, in the artist trying to paint that masterpiece, right? In people who are trying to craft a perfect piece of work. That is definitely a space facilitated by that deep work mode. Another great one is when you're the lead on the project. Right. Generally speaking, big projects have a relatively diverse team, but somebody is the lead. Someone's the point person. That person should be in the deep work gear because, first of all, they're responsible for the project. So they're all in on it. This is one of those times that for them, quality trumps productivity or speed. It's got to be done perfectly. So when you're the point person, you should be in the deep work gear. Additionally, somebody going into the deep work mode will set the tempo, right? Because once you go into the deep work mode, everybody else is now on your clock, right? Things are going to move forward when you're ready. When you bump things to the next level, that's when the gears turn. But everybody is now on your clock. The point person is the appropriate person to be setting that tempo. So if you're running a job, you should be all in on that because you have the best understanding of all the different pieces. You should be the one who says, okay, on Tuesday, we're going to go into this phase. On Thursday, we're going to engage these folks. Somebody has to be in that spot. It should be the person who is ultimately responsible for the perfection of that product. Those things, mental health considerations, when quality, there's no room for compromise. When you're the lead person on a project, those are incredible times to be in the deep work gear. When shouldn't you be in it? Well, I would argue most of the time, because most of the time you aren't the point person on the project, right? Deep work is not practical to have everybody engaged on it. Imagine trying to execute this project. Imagine if everybody was in the deep work mode, right? The point person and everybody else in the project. Imagine the conversations, right? Hey, we're going to meet on Wednesday to kind of circle up and figure out where we are. Ooh, team, we can't. Mary's actually not revisiting this until Friday, and Todd's actually going to circle back. He has a chunk of time for this next Tuesday. Unfortunately, we need Todd's info before Mary's, so let's all wait until Tuesday. Could you imagine this? Right? If everybody had rigid boundaries and couldn't make themselves available to do their smaller piece of the larger project, nothing would ever get done. And because there's usually a point person and a relatively larger team on a given task, I would argue that in most cases, for companies to be efficient and effective, you can't be in deep work most of the time. A second thing is that being out of the deep work gear is important when promptness trumps perfection. Team, I hate to break your bubble, but most of us are not painting the Mona Lisa. Right? Most of us are not doing that. We're not working on a masterpiece on any given day. Most of the time, we're playing a smaller role in something bigger, and that's a beautiful thing. But the oars in the boat need to row together, right? We've all got to be kind of in it every day to move things forward. Most things in my life, and I'm assuming in yours, do not require perfection. Most of my emails don't even need to have the words all spelt right, let alone have beautiful sentence structure. They just need to get responded to so things can get on the calendar, so things can move forward. Most tasks, right, as unromantic as that is, do not require perfection. They require promptness. And for that reason, being in the deep work state is very disruptive, because that's what you've got to appreciate. For all of the allure of it, it's important to realize that when you're in the deep work state, you are holding up a ton of other things, because most of us have multiple roles. So while in the role that you're the point person, the deep work state might make the most sense, but in all the other roles you fulfill, you're holding those things up, right? People aren't able to access you. You're not giving your quick stamp of approval. You can't get that next person on the task. You're holding up other gigs. That's fine every now and then. If the thing you are doing is so important that its perfection, it will outweigh all the other disruptions. There is a time for that give and take to be appropriate, but it's certainly not most of the time, right? It's for those unique events when that makes the most sense. So I just want us thinking about these two different ways of going about business. And it circles back to the question that I get all the time, which is, which one is better? If I'm trying to be successful, if I'm trying to move forward, right? I'm listening to these self-improvement podcasts. Well, if you're listening to these podcasts, right, about how to win the morning or what have you, deep work is definitely trending, right? It makes sense. It creates this very alluring vision, doesn't it? You tend to see the woodworker, right, making the handcrafted canoe, right? Usually out at a log cabin, there's certainly a stream. Perhaps there's birds in the background. There might be light music, but you have this picture of this just surreal. Technology is the enemy. There are no disturbances. Yes, that is beautiful. Yes, that is romantic. Yes, when we all retire, we're probably going to do something similar to that. But while you're in the grind, it is incredibly not practical most of the time. That's my overall feeling. When you're actually trying to run teams, when you're trying to get projects accomplished, we have to sometimes push back against the romanticism of crafting that novel in our treehouse. And we have to get down on the grind and accept the mental residue and the chaos that comes with actually getting things to the finish line. And so I think some pushback against the romanticism is very important. The bigger thing I want to say before we sign off is that yet again, our Achilles heel is this desire for right? This desire for a right or wrong way of being that we can just adopt and then be done with it, right? We so badly want to dichotomize this thing. It's probably the most tempting thing in all of our careers is choosing a lane. But team, the one thing we know over and over again, the one thing we all agree on is the only constant is change. The only constant is change, yet we desire rigidity when what is required is flexibility. How you should show up, you don't win the morning, you win each morning. And each morning is different. In each morning, you're playing a different part in different roles on different teams. The way you go about orchestrating your timelines, the way you make yourself or don't make yourself available, those decisions need to be made in real time, not a priori. These things need to be made in the trenches, in the moment. How you show up should change with the season, with the objective, with what is needed out of your role. Team the weapon is the person who can dance in and out of these states as required. It is the workflow chameleon that will always win the day. And yet it's the hardest thing, isn't it? Right? It's the hardest thing to not be one of these things, but to be someone who embraces the reality that you have to be all of these things, but only one at any given moment. That's the skill set. Can you dance in and out of these things? Can you tap into the deep work gear when those things need to be prioritized? Can you embrace the chaos and deal with the fact that some of the things you're doing only get 92% of your effort because more important is speed and completion? Can you come to some level of tolerance in ebbing and flowing? That's where the magic happens. If you want my answer to which one is better, it's always both. And more importantly, it's flexibility between them and awareness of which one needs priority. Give it some thought. I know the concept of deep work has a lot of fans, and I know I'm pushing back on it a bit here, but I hope there's some evidence supporting that. And I hope as you go through orchestrating your days, orchestrating your teams, you give this some thought and you prioritize flexibility above all else. Cheers, everybody. Have a wonderful Thursday. I'm heading to Charlotte. Cannot wait to see the Onward team. We have an awful lot of clinics now, so can't wait to have everybody in one room and strategize on how we can continue bringing fitness-forward physical therapy to this nation. Cheers, everybody. Take care.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.